Testing. Negotiation.
Today is Thursday, June 22nd. We are at the Green Ladle and we will call the meeting to order at 5:37 p.m. and we'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. We'll start committee member introductions with Councillor Scott.
Linda Scott, Lewiston City Council representative on the school committee.
Paul Beaupelin, Ward 7 representative.
Megan Hurd, Ward 6.
Ashley Medina, Ward 5.
Tanya Whitlow, Ward 4.
Elizabeth Eames, Ward 3.
Janet Bowden, Ward 2.
Bruce Thaman, Ward 1.
Megan Parks at large.
Jake Langley, Superintendent.
Thank you. Agenda item number 3 is to receive and potentially vote on the nomination for Assistant Director position for nutrition. And Alyssa or?
Yeah, if Alyssa could please come up to do an introduction, that'd be great. Alyssa Roman is the Director of Nutrition and Transportation.
Good evening. So today I am pleased to present Kinza Khan as a potential for new Assistant Director of Nutrition. Kinza comes to us. She's actually been in the school system in South Portland most recently, but she also comes to us originally from Pakistan with a master's in nutrition and dietetics. So I am very excited for her bringing a new view coming into our department and seeing what we do in Lewiston and seeing how we feed 5,000 kids breakfast, lunch, supper, snacks, and summer programs. We're going to have a lot of fun.
Did you want to say anything now or do you want us to vote first or do you have a preference?
I think we can start.
Okay.
I am Kinza Khan and I moved in Maine in 2019. First, I was working in YMCA, then I worked with Coney. And last year I switched my job and started working with South Portland School Department. So now I'm here in Lewiston.
Welcome.
It's
We're
nice
glad
to
you're
meet
here.
you all. Thank you.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Seconded by member Eames. Any discussion? All in favor? It's unanimous. Welcome to our district. Agenda item number 4 is the consent agenda. Are there any items that members would like set aside? Seeing none, the consent agenda is adopted. Public input. Members of the public may address the school committee for up to 3 minutes on non-agenda items now and on agenda items later. Comments that pertain to staff, personnel matters, or a student issue should be directed to the superintendent or the appropriate staff member of Lewiston Public Schools. Public comments shall be directed to the school committee and be brief, not repetitive, and related to the matter at hand. Before starting, please state your name, address, and affiliation to Lewiston Public Schools. Are there any members of the public that would like to speak? Seeing none, we will move on. Agenda item number 6 is to receive and potentially vote on summer academy field trips and activities. Superintendent Langlis.
So this was kind of late coming across the desk, so I apologize for this one. but I did want to get it in front of you in case there were any concerns. We've, as you know, planned the summer academies for some of those bulk of sophomore and junior students that are, I would say, credit lacking due to different impacts in their lives in COVID. And so we've built these academy experiences that will help students identify what competencies they're missing and go about trying to demonstrate those and their knowledge and skill set. Part of that is to have novel experiences. And so I notified the folks that are connected to this that our next school committee meeting was July 10th. And if they had anything like this, we needed it soon so we can be planning the other components for us. So when this meeting got created for a few different reasons, I wanted to get it in front of you as soon as I could. And so I did share a list of spaces with you, but the folks running this didn't know what would need this list as quickly because they thought July 10th was going to be that date, but they have programming before then. I also wanted to add, I messaged you all, there are components to this that are, Wednesday, Thursday are going to be nice. So we're going to go do that hike. And it's hard to give you hard dates, but I wanted you to be fully notified and give you opportunity to speak to the fact that we would follow safety procedures, certainly be parent permissions, and we would do all those things. But some of these include water. And while they include water services, I will ensure that we're using certified water services and not just Joe has a boat, we're going to head out to a place. And making sure all those are in order. But I also know that there may be some reservations about some of these pieces. So I want to put it before you for discussion and see what things you are comfortable supporting with this level of detail, what things you might want to have come back for more detail. That's helpful.
Any questions or comments, Member Scott?
So first off, I'd like to thank Member Eames for the questions that she had asked, because I was concerned too about the water and ensuring that we have water safety. We've been down this road before, and just to be cautious that we don't, I just think that we need to be really extra cautious around that. So I feel that if you're telling us that you're going to ensure that there's going to be those safety pieces in place, the parents know full well that there's going to be water involved, that I'm comfortable with letting you make those decisions. I would also question, as the other email stated, I think the main mall. I thought that was a little bit different. I'm not sure the educational purpose of the main mall. I appreciated all the other stuff, but again, I leave it in their discretion. If they find that that's something that's worthwhile, then
There's like
Have
zip
at it.
lining and an arcade and stuff there. That's the only thing I can think of, but yeah.
They do have those things, but I think it's none of those, although it might be now that we thought of it. One of the modules focuses on small business development. And so they were going to be looking at like pop-up stores and like the centerpiece aisle components and kiosk, and looking at, if you had a product, how might you go about this small development from a small business perspective.
Zip lining sounds more fun, but I guess that's the educational piece.
They might zip line at the end.
Member Hurd?
Thank you. I didn't see Pineland Farms on this list, and I know they do a ton of like ice cream making and butter making and salsa making. You can pick strawberries there. They have farm tours like that. I think is like a huge asset, and it's not that far, and there's no water, and there's a lot of they have so many things throughout the summer. So I didn't know if we could add, or if you could add that or suggest that, or just something else to add to the list.
Yeah, it's a great idea. If everyone's okay, I'd be okay with adding that. Toward the end, it does say other sites around, because I think it was opportunistic if you're taking that road trip, or if you have a smaller window of weather, what else might you do? But again, these would all be state park. If you're taking a boat out to somewhere, it's with a certified vessel and captain and all of those things. If there's anything that's not that, I'm going to say no, because I don't want to take the chance.
My only concern on the list was Rang Pond for obvious reasons. There's that drop off there that is not only for our students, but just in general has been problematic. And so that one really concerns me. I'm uncomfortable with Rang Pond, but I also understand that kids really enjoy going there. In addition to all of the water safety stuff, just making sure that the kids are aware that if you go out past 25 feet, there's a dangerous drop off, because I think that's a lot of people aren't aware of that, and that's what people get caught up on.
I wouldn't have any objection to saying not there at this time, until we knew more about the swimmers and things of that nature. I'd be okay with
That's
that.
the one that really jumped out on the list to me, concerned me. Member Bowden?
I just, I look at it like if we're gonna take away Ring Pond, then we probably shouldn't be sending them to Popham Beach. You know, the ocean is more dangerous in my opinion than Ring Pond. I don't know. I see lots of little like Sebago Lake State Park. Are we okay with Sebago Lake? I just don't know the answer to that, but if you're uncomfortable with Ring Pond, then I think you need to look at all of the places that could potentially be a problem.
I can tell you exactly what I was doing the moment I got the phone call that said that one of our students had died at Ring Pond. Like I can feel it's a very visceral response. And so maybe I'm overly sensitive to it, but that's the thing that jumped out on that list to me was because we lost a student there. And so, yeah, the other places, there's always safety risks with the water, but just knowing the layout of Ring Pond and that we've already had negative experiences there, that's why it sort of stands out to me more. But I'm open to what other people want to agree. Member Damon?
Yeah, and I agree that Malaga Island maybe has some incredible historical significance for lots of folks. But again, access is an issue. You know, and I'm not aware of any type of organized shuttle service or anything to that space. So I mean, I think it from a history lesson, I think it could be incredible. But I think getting out there and even to the island. I mean, if you were going to jump on Casco Bay lines and you were going out to Peaks, yeah, okay. I'm not as concerned about that. But going out there to me I think there's an additional level of risk there that if it's organized properly, I'd be okay with it. And I think it could be incredible for the kids to go, but I think some additional planning needs to go into that one in particular.
I may be wrong on which island is which, but I think there's now, because of the erosion and the sediment movement, there's one island you can definitely get to at low tide, and another that I think someone said recently that you could almost get to on the river's mouth, but I'm not sure which one is Malaga Island. But again, not sending someone out there if that's the case. So I'm gonna have to do some research.
One thing to get
It's a wait if you want to come back out on low tide unless you're moving along.
Member Whitlow?
Could, it says summer academy field trips. Is that high school level? Okay. All right. And is that, are these students in this program? Do they follow directions really well? Like what's the clientele? I guess I'm asking.
They're high school students. I don't mean that to be facetious, but I think you'll have a whole mix of kids who are super cautious and those you have to watch really, really close supervision wise. So it's a mix of things. I'm comfortable with being conservative on an approval here and bringing things back to you after July 10th with more detail. I think it was more of a, hey, you can't do any of these until this goes before the committee, and we happened to have this meeting. So I wanted to get something in front of you, but I'm fine with being really, really conservative on an approval as an initial. And then if you want to do more detailed things like Malaga Island, I feel like I need more detail before I would say, yes, go ahead and do it. So probably you need more detail before you can say you'd approve it.
Member Eames?
I'm curious about the history of these. Is this a brand new initiative, or have we been doing such things all along?
So this is a different approach to the things that kids are missing in classes they've taken. Instead of sitting in the high school and looking at a certain context, we're trying to stimulate not only a different credit recovery process, but student interest in education as a whole. And so we're looking at these novel experiences as trying to create that purpose of why am I doing this other than I completed 9 worksheets the first week of summer school and I'm done. And so that's the goal, is to really make it interest-based and try to get kids to realize education can be an enjoyable experience, and they're missing some of those things that they're not attending at the high school or next step, but they could maybe slide back into that process again.
Member Damon?
Yeah, I think these experiences can be really valuable. My daughter taught at Monmouth Academy for a number of years, and they have an interesting program. The first week of school, They take the entire, I mean, it's a small school. They take the entire freshman class, and it's what's called Moby, my own backyard, and they take them to Acadia. And typically 95% of the kids living in the Monmouth Winthrop area have never been to Acadia. They just have never had any type of experience like that. It ends up being a real bonding experience for that whole class. And they go down there for 5 days, and it's just the way the kids come back from that is just so much growth in that 1 week that it all of these type of things is really valuable. I support the idea. It's just, I think there are a few details missing, but I think it can be, really valuable, because a lot of kids, there's a lot of kids that have never done anything. They've never been to Boston. They've never been to New York. They've never been to Acadia. I mean, they've never been to Acadia. I mean, that's what an incredible place that is. So.
Member Bowden?
Just a clarifying question. So the summer programming connected to Next Step and LHS students, is this for students who didn't earn the credits that they needed to earn throughout the school year?
So it's connected to that, but we're not closing it to others. But it is intended to help. For those of you who participate in the Pathways Committee, we have a lot of juniors, especially, that are not on track to graduate because of the COVID disruption, or just when we look at the COVID years, they did not earn credits. And so we're trying to navigate this new water of making sure students who, when they came back to school this year for the academics they did participate in, they seem to do just fine. But those 2 years is just a big gap. And short of us modifying the graduation criteria, we're trying to help close the gap. But it's this interesting anomaly of kids who are seemingly very capable, who for that 1.5 to 2 year window, there's almost nothing
Okay.
as far as credit achievement.
I guess I just wanted to make sure we weren't, in a sense, rewarding students who didn't do what they were supposed to do all school year with all of these fun trips and things, and giving them credits a different way. I just wanted to make sure that this was like for the right reasons, I guess.
Yeah,
So-
and so kids are going to have individualized learning components tied to this based on what their needs are, and they're going to have to demonstrate their learning, whether it's on the trip or otherwise, as part of this hopefully interest-based piece where they said, well, I'm willing to demonstrate my math skills through a business plan and that effort. So I'll do that work, and there's some experiences tied to it for interest-based, but they still have to do the work. You can't just, it's not like a summer camp where you show up and then it ends and then credits appear in your transcript. There's academic work behind it.
Any other questions? Does this need a vote?
I'd like a vote on at least components, but I also made a note that we could add Pineland, pull out Malaga Island, and specifically, I can review any water activities. I think I know your threshold, and we have the same level of concern for safety and supervision. If that works, that could be a motion.
Is there a motion?
Yeah, I'll make the motion to go ahead and to give the superintendent the authority to make a decision as to approve some of these trips for the summer program.
So you're not specifying what?
I'm not
can and can't?
specifying, no, I think that gets into too much minutia there. I think just say we'll leave it up to Jake initially, and if there's anything that's questionable, he'll bring it back to us.
Good. I think Malaga, sorry, thank you. I think Malaga Island is hugely helpful educationally, so I don't know if there's just more details figuring out the logistics of getting there. I think it would be great to keep it on the list.
I was also around for the student that we lost, and also others, and so I'll be hypersensitive to making sure that any of these trips that happen have the level of safety that I would send my own children on.
Good, thank you. Any further discussion? All in favor? It's unanimous. Yeah, Tanya seconded it. Next would be a report from our student reps who are on summer vacation. Report from school committee chair. I don't have anything to report tonight. Report from the superintendent.
I'm sure there's 100 things. I think we have some things in executive session to talk about, and I'll focus on that for this meeting and maybe do more updates on July 10th when our students return from skills and some other end of year activities and go from there.
Member Whitlow.
Superintendent, could you talk about the whole fields stuff that's online and just kind of what your input is on it and everything?
So, yes, I can't speak to the stuff online. I try to shield my own exposures to an extent, because
I'm just talking about like Sun Journal
Okay,
article that I don't.
yeah. So I've looked at the articles that have been shared. Some of it is factual, some of it I think is embellished a bit. But the real concern around the fields is there's a few things, and I think that they've been discussed, but the complex as a whole belongs to the city. And so as a school department, we have this crossover with some level of maintenance, a lot of supervisory responsibility. Certainly feels like the grounds of the school. Of course, all of our schools belong to the city, but the fields have this different city property feel to them. So even if we want to do something as a school system, so if we want to have, for this, Jason will share our athletic schedule with the rec department that gives us priority on the fields. But that's still a process that happens. It's not just a given. It gets priority, so it does feel like a given, but all of these rentals, so like youth football, youth baseball, rec track, all that stuff, it all filters through the city and by way of the rec department. So the challenges that we're facing around misuse, vandalism, and whatnot is really anchored in the fact that we have an existing rental policy, and both here and city. If you want to use the fields, you are supposed to go to the folks at the rec and make a request, and they can approve it. And there's costs, there's supervisory fees and things of that nature. So then discussions happen because we've had a lot of, and I don't know how much people followed the meeting the other night, but we've had a lot of things occur that Jason shared, from broken siding, broken speakers, broken Wi-Fi transmitters that are used for scorekeeping and things like that, broken nets, broken equipment, missing equipment, sand from the boxes where kids or athletes jump into for like long distance jumping. It's all over the track and on the field. And that's a competition track, so there's a lot of money invested in that. There's also some things that I think was an install choice or selection that we probably would do differently, but there's a lot of rocks around for drainage purposes, and those end up on the playing surface. And if you have a couple, you can go move them, but we've had days where we show up, there's thousands. Jason will call me and say, I got people showing up here and we're looking for volunteers. He and I are picking up rocks off the field on Sunday morning. And so what's happening is, because the facility is not a locked facility. So you can walk through, you got to go through a gate, but it's not locked. We got to a point this spring that we started locking it because of the levels of damage. We had concession stands broken into, things stolen. Those metal roll drop gates, we've had them torn right off there. The slides and brackets. I mean, there was a day, I forget what it was a state tournament, and we were hosting. It might have been last year. I don't know. But Jason and I were at the facility. Well, Jason was there. He called me and said, I don't know what you're doing right now, but if you could come help, it'd be great. So I went down and I brought like tools with me because he said I need them. And we were trying to fix this drop gate because everyone who showed up from the state could see just this thing bent and twisted. And that was the gate you walk in to get in. And it was just not a good look, for our community. So we fixed it as quickly as we could, and we had someone else come in after to actually fix it. Just the trash. The fields also have some specifics, especially the turf, around how they should or should not be used because of how it can damage the turf. So things like sugary drinks, they stick and they get caught in the rubber pellets that are part of the field, and they create hard spots. And they can actually, if someone cuts on them, can actually rip the fibers out, and then you have tears in your turf, and then who knows what someone's going to do with a tear in the turf. There should be no sugar drinks. It should be water only. Things like, yeah. But when there's a supervisor, they say, Gatorade's got to stay off the field. You can have them here and come to the gate and get it. And most of our kids now know to just bring water. But food, whatnot, we had one day, there was like a family of 6 people sitting in the middle of the baseball field having a picnic. You know, put out the blanket, bunch of food, and it was like, this is the stuff that damages the field. And the drainage system is set up as such with stone dust underneath that everything's going to filter down and out. And if you have spills and things like that, it's problematic. Gum, obvious, those kinds of things, taffy, starburst. The big one's been the rocks, but I think the thing that some of the straws that built up in the pile that kind of broke the back was, I was there for a state track meet one day, and a group of people showed up to play soccer. And this isn't the only instance, and it's not just about soccer, but told athletes that had traveled from all around the state to be at our facility, which is a beautiful place to host, told athletes who were warming up for the track meet that they needed to leave the field because they had reserved it. And they had not. So you had track athletes warming up for their state competitions that they had built up for, leaving the baseball field where they were stretching and warming up because they were told that this other group had the field, and they didn't. And so that field was reserved for athletes to warm up for the state meet. So when we see people leaving that field, we look into like, well, what's going on? Well, they told us they have reserved the field and we had to leave. And so those things are really frustrating when we're trying to host events. And it's not always soccer. It's not always anything else. Last night, a report made its way to me that there were 50 or so people on the fields doing whatever. Some were just hanging out, some playing tag, some throwing things, some not. So there was a cleanup effort again. Want to protect the asset, want to provide it for community. And I think some of the crossover is just to replace sections or pieces or the whole field. Just throwing numbers around. Baseball field would be something like $1.5 million, $1.7 million probably, because you got take up and put down. It was a little over $1 million to put in, but you didn't have to tear up. You were just building on a good surface. We've had to do some repairs for things that we're not sure what happened. These aren't necessarily public, but on the football field, 2/3 of the way down to the far end, on the right-hand side, we had a spot in the turf that looked like it had been broken through by something. And we had some rain that weekend and it caused a washout underneath the turf. So we had to actually have someone come out and professionally unstitch the seam, peel it back, fill underneath, hand tamp, restitch, and then repelletize the area, and then run equipment to make sure it was a smooth surface again. So those are the things that have just become challenging. And the way the facility is set up, it's hard to just say, not the turf, but you can use the grass field of the track, but try to be nice to the track, because it's all in the same confined-ish space. So I think that's part of the challenge. I know we have other spaces that can be used. The field right here next to Connors is available. There's not even a gate on that side. Of course, McGraw is new, and I heard different concerns around that. And I appreciate people wanting to use the turf, but there are also some people who they're in there by, say, happenstance is probably a bad term, but if it's a walkthrough, right? If you're anybody, you pick the age, walking through at 11:30 on a Tuesday night, and you're hungry, you're like, wait a minute, there's a concession stand here. I remember that. Let's try to get some food, right? To me, I think there's some opportunistic things that if the gates were closed, you don't have that traffic. So we thought about what are the impacts if we don't do this, or if we do this, and it's thinking, okay, so you lose that path, but you kind of don't, because the one that goes between Connors and the high school goes down around to Bartlett and also behind Longley. Beside Longley, it dumps out near House Street. We have a number of playing surfaces in the immediate area. To solve all of this, I would love to have a community effort to look at what we could do to supervise. We're actually coordinating some things now. Linda's helped, Megan's gonna be involved, to try to talk with community about what can people do to supervise, what people can't. It was ironic, I left the meeting the other night with Mr. Fuller, and we saw someone outside who's pretty actively involved in areas of our community. Plays on a men's soccer team, good with the youth, like someone I think we could lean on. I'll leave the names out of it, and said, hey, would you help with this? Would you help with getting other people involved, talking to kids, talking to each other, trying to hold an expectation if we are using the field, hey, we got to pick up that trash before we go, that kind of stuff. And he looked right at us and said, whoa, not my job, bro. And I think that was hard, because I think of like the whole community aspect, and I think of like Elliott Little League is private property. You pay to play in that league. It's private property, but I've seen faces at this table right here at that field, mowing lawns, running concession stands, you name it. I mean, even I've mowed the lawn over there. It's just what you do. If you're a part of that organization, you try to take care of it. And so this is city property, highly respected as a facility, as a complex. And I think we ought to protect it. But be mindful of supervision and rental is not a barrier that can't be overcome. It can be overcome by community action. It can be overcome by community involvement to raise money to pay for use. It can be overcome by people saying, hey, look, I'm a leader in our community. I will go and supervise this activity and I will fill out the rental agreement and we can figure this out. So I think even with the parameters the city's considering, and they've only done a first read and there's more work between now and then, I think things can be worked out and not have it feel like one group of people were told you can't use this facility, because that's not what it is, but it's a narrative I think that showed up in the paper with the picture that was taken, and it showed this perception of a small group of people using the field. What's wrong with this? And I think the real answer to that question is there's nothing wrong with that. The problem is all of the other things that happen. And I think mentally we put things in our minds of, well, what must have caused that vandalism? And I think we all paint a picture in our own heads. But I can tell you that some of the things that I've seen that I've been involved with when we've asked kids to leave the field, when there was 65 kids, probably. And one kid telling other kids to just all work together to tell us all to go somewhere. Say that nicely. And then if law enforcement is called or available and we kind of flag them down, they take off running and they come back an hour later. And so it's not necessarily one piece or the other. I think it's a culmination of straws that came together. And I think we want to protect the asset, have some expectations. And if we take the time as a community, I don't think it's just about this field. I think it's about everything. And we talked about some of these things in recent events, even like the graduation was, say thank you. And if you're going across the street, wave to someone that let you go, even though it's crosswalk. It's just good community behavior, picking up after yourself. If you bring it in, you take it out. It's all of those things. And it's not just about the fields. I think it's a community thing. So it kind of went on and on, but I don't want people to think that this is targeted a specific group. It may feel that way because of different media outlets and different pushes. But the other harsh reality is there's two large viable fields within a stone's throw distance of the fields that are being used, that are open. I drove by both McGraw and Connors on the way in just to look at their condition because of the way they were talked about on Tuesday night, and McGraw looks pristine and Connors looks great. And so I get it, but no, but I guess, just in the last couple of days of nice weather, crews have had a chance to get on them and the facilities look really good.
Is there insurance for the turf, like for damage? Is there any kind of insurance coverage for that?
So we have municipal insurance and sometimes the claim is bigger than the need to fix. So it's always that game, but yes, there's as a municipality, we do have insurance on our facilities. I'd have to ask the city what specifically is covered. I don't know if they cover turf or not.
Member Eames?
Yeah, so clearly straws have built up and broken the camel's back, but there's a long history in this town that this is feeding into. So some of the emotion may seem out of place, but it's due to the long history of the soccer folks feeling unable to get a field. And so that predates all of this. And so I think we have to be cognizant of that long history of the previous rec department not dealing with the soccer leagues in town, most of whom are brown and black. So there's that. And I don't think we can get around that history that really is there. I'm just speaking to the public. So when there's a problem and the first move is to go straight to City Hall and the cops instead of going to the community, I think there was a missing step. Maybe there was a step that I don't know about, but I feel like maybe it escalated in a way that it didn't have to.
I guess I want to say publicly and put on the record that those conversations have happened. We have gone to community leaders. We have talked to them about helping with the youth, helping with the trash, helping with supervisory. Can we get groups over here? We've talked to the rec about creating programming so that it would like kind of forcibly be available for people that want to do those things. And the other thing I want to say is I can appreciate the historical perspective, but I also think there's a perception there about some of our adult soccer groups that is also inaccurate in kind of a different way, in that they have rented, they have paid fees. We have an adult semi-pro like team here in Lewiston, and they have been renting the facilities. And so I don't know the track record of that from a historical perspective, but I know that there have been rentals and things of that nature in an organized way. So, and those have not been denied.
I'm very glad to hear that you have done the intermediate steps in the public version of things that hadn't happened. So the public version needs to be amended to include that.
Yeah, and I think these platforms and others are the way to do it. I'd also say that some of the folks that spoke at the city council meeting the other night are the very same folks that have said, I'm not doing that. That's not my job.
Member Hurd?
Maybe it will change now.
Thank you. So I just have to say, kind of to your point, being a participant in Little League this year, as a community, you do come together and you do take care of what's out there in the community, because it is a reflection directly on you as a community. And I'm sorry, but if I invite you to my house over and over again and you make a mess and you destroy it and you don't respect it, then I'm not going to invite you back to my house. And it's the same kind of thing. And unfortunately, I'm not saying it's everybody that uses the field. There are probably a lot of people who use it respectfully and responsibly, but there is a small group, and I don't care if it's soccer, football, lacrosse, track, Little League, I don't care who you are, but if you're not respecting the facility, you can't expect continued use of that facility, because it's the same thing. I'm sure at their home, if they disrespect their home, that's not allowed. That doesn't happen. There has to be repercussion for your actions. So if you want to use the facility, then you take care of it. It sounds very simple. And unfortunately, if we can't as a community come together, and that's everybody come together and follow the same, respect what's here and treat it as if it's your own, then I say, lock it up, shut it down. I hate saying like, you'll learn if this is taken away. Hopefully these people that aren't respecting it will learn to respect it. And I hate to use that as an example, but maybe that's what it's going to take, because obviously whatever's happening right now, they haven't gotten the message that this is not okay. This behavior is not okay. We shouldn't be treating the fields this way.
I just want to add to that too. This is not unheard of. Most communities, you cannot walk onto their formal playing surfaces and use them at all. They're locked, they're gated, they have tall fences. So that's most communities. Of course, there's other fields and access areas. But I think that they got to that point for a reason, whether it was old people like me trying to play pickup football with their buddies on a Sunday. Like they were damaging fields and causing, problems because, they were going to play on wet conditions and it was fun to get muddy and whatever, and it destroyed fields. And over the evolution of things, if you look at most formal facilities in Maine, they're not accessible for general public use. They are available for certain kinds of use, but not just available for general public use. So, but it does feel like a step back in that sense that we have been using them for different things. So I was even joking with Bill earlier that years ago when we coached freshman football together, the practice field was locked. Like there were times where we had to run back up to the coach's office to get the key because you couldn't even get on the practice field behind the high school without a key. And that wasn't even a formalized facility. It had a slope. Water ran, well, I don't know whether it went anywhere, but it was intended to run off. But I guess there's other context to this and to protect the facility that is not just about disbarring one group over another. It's about usage and supervision and maintenance of I think a highly valued asset in our community.
So beyond like the normal wear and tear that happens when a group is using the field or playing a game, is the majority of the like trash, vandalism, damage to gates, do you think more from just like passersby who are walking through at 11 o'clock at night, like the example you said, or is it these groups that are having organized games like every Tuesday night, or what do you think is more the cause of the damage?
if I had to narrow the vandalism piece, it would be lightly from somewhat organized usage, and largely from not. And I do think just if the gate's not closed, anybody can go through and it's just seen as a throughway. And I think throughways can cause distractions that lead to what otherwise might not have happened if you weren't there, like that concession stand example. But I do, one example is it was kind of insinuated on Tuesday night that if there were soccer goals on that baseball field, they wouldn't move things around or kick things against the building. Not true. We had soccer field goals there that were so damaged and disrepair that we couldn't keep them. And we made a conscious decision. This was back when I was a principal to not put goals back out there because we can practice without those formal big goals. And they were being destroyed. And I'm talking goals that were like $4,000 a piece with high quality netting, real pipe, like kind of like take the approach of put nice things out and people will use it and take care of it. And those were destroyed. Lacrosse nets have gone missing and or been shredded. Those kinds of things. And it's not from playing lacrosse. It's from someone on the side who's not in the game at that time, grabbing it, running around with it, and ramming into like the dugout. And then you've got these puncture holes and whatnot. Or while the game's happening on the far end of the baseball field, others are practicing by kicking at the dugout, and that's what damaged the siding and other equipment. So it's just kind of, like I said, it's a buildup. I wouldn't narrow it to one particular group. And there's some vandalism that's happened. We don't even know who it was. We haven't a clue. We don't know if they were young, old. We don't know if they were passing through, if they were there for something else, or if someone was there for something else and it was their little brother or their uncle. We don't have that context.
Member Scott, do you want to segue to your city council rep
Yeah.
report or?
Most of what I was going to talk about was going to be that particular piece. So, and I could probably go on about this particular thing for quite a while. I was on the building committee originally when the field was built. I was part of all of these discussions when it came to these fields, what happened with the fields, what fields were available back in the day, conversations with the mosque, conversation with many community members, with Superintendent Webster, myself, a lot of different people. First off, I want to say, and they're not here tonight, but I'm not afraid to say it out loud. That article in the paper was extremely misleading, and shame on the Sun Journal for doing that. Because not only did they put a picture out there, they put a narrative out there that the decision was already made and it's not made, and that this was happening, and then it was portrayed to look like it was done specifically towards a certain community group in our city. And I think they should be ashamed of themselves for doing that, because that is not at all what is happening. And that's what we're seeing on social media. And that's what I'm seeing is for comments and responses on social media in respect to this. And I think that's why Member Eames has made some of the statements that she said, because that is the way it's being portrayed. And that is not at all the facts. So shame on them for doing that, first off. So when we had our meeting Tuesday evening, and this was discussed, so initially part of this discussion was not just about the athletic fields. There was a big discussion around what's going on with Jude's place as well, and the kind of vandalism that is happening there, extensive vandalism happening there, to the only special needs playground and the first one in the state of Maine. And personally, I am infuriated by all of this, and that we even have to have this conversation. And I said it the first time we discussed it a few weeks ago, that shame on this community for treating our good stuff that way. We used to have pride. We need to bring pride back. I seriously think that that is an issue. That being said, Tuesday evening, it was also suggested that I want to be very careful the way I say things, because I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings. I really don't. And I understand where people are coming from. But the city is not a billionaire that can just do what it wants to for certain groups because they feel that they deserve to have something. That being said, parks and stuff were put together specifically, and conversations were had specifically, especially about McGraw Park, ensuring that there was soccer fields available, because there were conversations about how difficult it was to play at Samar Payne Park. There were conversations on how they keep saying Sunnyside Park is a good place. It's not a good place. It's not the right size for a soccer field. It doesn't have the right kind of drainage, and that's one of the parks that hardly ever gets mowed. So there were comments made Tuesday evening that implied that it is the responsibility of the school department and the police department to ensure this stuff is being done, and not the responsibility of parents or community members. I don't necessarily agree with that, because I used to be an Elliott Field parent. I grew up in a family that helped build some of the ice rinks that were available for hockey players, and that's how families did it. And I did mention that in the meeting, but this past Tuesday in the meeting before. There were community members there that suggested that we have conversations with the mosque. I was the only city councilor that spoke out and said, let's do this. And I will figure out how to do this, because I think it's important that we do that. And that there's full conversations, that before any decision is made, or final decision by the city council on what is going to or not going to happen in these fields, we need to have full conversation done. So that is in the process right now. I've spoken to the superintendent. I've spoken to our chairperson. I've spoken to 2 other city councilors who I think should be part of this conversation, Councilor Harriman and Councilor Pease, because these parks are in their wards. And we're also been trying to coordinate when we can meet with the mosque prior to the next city council meeting, which is July 17th, 18th. Thank you. But I've also stated that that was the first meeting, the first reading of this, and that I think that if we have a date set up, but we're not able to meet prior to that, we do have the opportunity, and I spoke to Councilor Harriman, and I will speak to Councilor Pease about this, that we can still table this until we can make sure we have those conversations and everybody's on the same page, because I don't want to affect anything. But at the same time, I do want to recognize that this has to be compromised on all sorts of people's parts here. And it cannot be just assumed that something's going to happen for a specific reason, just like it can't be assumed that the city's doing this for a specific reason. There's a lot of history involved here, and I think a lot more conversations that need to be had. That being said, I'm doing everything I can to make sure that we have those conversations and that we move forward in a good way. I want to see soccer field. I think it's extremely important that we encourage the kind of athletic activity that's happening, because part of the original conversation was that there's not enough activity for our youth, and our youth get in trouble when they don't have activities. So it's a good thing to have sports and all sorts of sports activities. And unless anybody has any more questions on that, I think I'm done with that particular piece.
Member Eames?
Let me just suggest that the new churches be involved as well, not the asylum seeking groups who have new churches, not just the mosque. And there's more than one mosque as well.
Yeah, we were pointed in the direction. We're speaking with both mosques right now, but I appreciate that because I hadn't thought about that. The mosques were mentioned to us on Tuesday, specifically the 2 mosques.
Right,
So.
and I just wanted to add that. And they don't have the long history, that set of immigrants don't have the long history that I was referring to earlier, but they still are dealing with the fallout now.
And we had also talked about putting this out publicly for anyone who wants to participate in a meeting around this, to talk about what folks in the community might want to contribute to the upkeep.
Member Whitlow?
Yeah, Linda, I know you'd mentioned Jude's place. What you said, there's been vandalism there. I'm kind of curious of what kind of vandalism. I mean, that park is used so much. I mean, every time I go by there, there's probably at least 20 kids and moms, and it's heavily used. So I could see where the wear and tear would come, but I'm curious about the vandalism.
So first off, I want to say that I fought hard to make sure that they didn't change the hours on that at least during the summertime, we went with, kind of like when we do with other parks. It's when it gets dark, then we can close it down, because I pointed out specifically that when we left graduation the other night, when I left, there were people still playing there, and it was after 8 o'clock at night. So it's very well used, and there is usage, wear and tear, but the vandalism has been significant, literally breaking some of the pieces. This equipment is hugely expensive and difficult to get. Breaking some of the pieces, making it so that the wheelchairs can no longer go in the wheelchair spot, but also some graffiti that is very vulgar, extremely vulgar. So unfortunately, yeah. I'm sorry, I forgot. I forgot about everything.
I was contemplating asking you another question and continuing the conversation or just letting you move on. So
I-
sorry.
I'll just touch on a couple of things
Okay.
that we had. We had a really great presentation about the solid waste recycling automated collection program. It's coming, folks. These are going to be the new trash trucks that are going to have the side pickup arms, just like you see in the movie. They're going to grab your trash can and so there's going to be new trash cans for everybody. It's a whole new program. And it's going to be rolled out slowly so that everybody understands the process of it. I already asked a million questions because there's certain size trash cans. The city's going to pay the first set, because everybody's going to get trash cans to go along with the program, but there's going to be bigger size ones, 2 different size ones. And I just compared it to myself. I will let you know that my comments were this short little lady cannot push around on my driveway that is literally like this, a 96-gallon trash can. I'm going to get run over and somebody's going to have to come help me get up. So we had those conversations, but we are just at the beginning stages. And I brought this with me. I'll pass it around so that others can see, but this is sort of the new, one of the educational pieces that they're going to be putting out in Casella. So you guys can take a look at that. I did also want, I mean, we had all sorts of different things on the agenda, but we don't have to go into the whole detail of all of that. I think the biggest thing I want to talk about is the Youth Advisory Council's last event before they leave. So the Youth Council goes from the end of July until the end of July each year. And so the seniors, this will be their last event that they're going to be holding. And then we actually did interviews for 4.5 hours today for new Youth Council members that are going to be coming in for this next coming up school year. And so the kids have been having a lot of discussions around homelessness and things that they see as big issues in our community. And they had a million different ideas they wanted to do. And I told them that they're done on like July 18th. So let's figure what can you do quick, but also help out. And their decision was to do lemonade. It's called Drink Lemonade and Donate School Aid, which I thought was very cute. And they're doing this at the store next door. And it's going to be open up for people to bring in donations for either toiletry donations or school supply donations for the kids that are part of the store next door, for their peers that are homeless. And they're going to be giving out cups of lemonade to people that donate. And the email went out for all city staff members to go and do this. We're really pushing this with we're hoping to push it with the school employees too, that message is going to go out that everybody can be involved in. And I know that the city shared the event on the official City of Lewiston, Maine's Facebook page. So there's something there that if you all could go look at and share it, I think it's a great thing. It's for Thursday, July 6th from noon to 4:30 at the store next door. And they were really adamant about not just school supplies, toiletries and other stuff that their peers might need. So I thought that was great. And I wanted to make sure we mentioned that. And that's it.
Thank you. Any updates from school committee subcommittees? Member Damon?
Well, one of the sessions we have tonight has to do with some of the negotiations. And we had a successful resolution to the general government contract bargaining agreement. There's still some minutia to be dealt with, but it looks like that is pretty much wrapped up. That would be the last of the open negotiation sessions that we have currently scheduled. And so that was very positive. I want to put a big shout out to Bill Grant, because he's been integral in all of this, and he's done yeoman's duty on some of this stuff. And I'm glad that he's doing the spreadsheets, not me. So, but it's been an interesting conversation. But I think we have a good resolution to it. So happy with that.
Good, thank you. Have any other subcommittees met? Doesn't look like it. Okay. Agenda item number 12 is school committee community announcements. Member Bowden?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that, if you don't know, the 5 students that we sent to Skills USA in Atlanta, Georgia are there safely. They got there on Monday. The first thing they did was a live zombie escape room, which was pretty cool. They had a lot of fun with that. Yeah. And so, yeah, there are pictures. If you follow the LRTC page on Facebook or Instagram, Miss Poliquin's been really great about taking photos every day and giving updates every day on what's going on. At this point, as of 5 o'clock, everybody is done with their competitions. I know that Natalie was yesterday morning for 3 hours and she was the only one that was like done in a 3 hour span just in one day. And everyone else was competing today pretty much all day. So there's some pictures up of the things that Faith has baked. They look delicious and absolutely beautiful. You can see the sink that Cade plumbed. It's amazing. And so, I mean, shout out to all the kids. They've been working their butts off while they're there. And tonight they are relaxing and enjoying some outside entertainment. There's games, there's food trucks, there's all sorts of stuff going on. And they get to find out tomorrow night during closing ceremonies if they placed. So really looking forward to finding that out.
Any other community announcements? Are there any events coming up, Linda?
4th of July is coming up, we'll meet again,
All right.
right? I mean,
Yep.
Liberty Fest, right?
Yep.
Mike isn't on.
4th of July. She said 4th of July, but her mic wasn't on.
Sorry, all I was thinking was the Liberty Fest. I can't think of anything else coming up because next week's the last week of June and then July. No, that's it, I think. Yeah.
Oh, there's yeah, is that a school appropriate thing? There's like the River Fest and other stuff on the 24th on
Oh,
Saturday.
yes, that's right. Yes, I forgot. I'm
Yes.
sorry.
Let's move on. Agenda item number 13 is any future agenda items. Member Bowden?
Thank you. I was hoping that we could take a look at Maine Inside Out and what our agreement is with them, what we're doing with them, what our collaboration is. You know, there was some stuff in the news. There's something pretty disturbing that's gone on. And I'm starting to question the legality of having that program in our schools or under children. So I wanted to take a look at that as a committee and try to see what we should do going forward.
What,
Any other future member Bopalant?
Thank you. It's come to my attention that next year at the high school, there's going to be a schedule change instituted by Principal Radke to extend homeroom into what I call a mentor period. He has effectively put out a question and answer paper on that. But here we go again, as my experience as a teacher, I see some negatives that haven't been addressed. And while it may be already sealed, I'd like to have an explanation of what that's going to involve and be able to give my concerns and criticisms of it. Thank you.
Anything else? All right, agenda item number 14 is to enter into executive session to discuss negotiations in accordance with 1 MRSA 405D. Sarah, moved by member Bowden,
Second.
and all in favor.